Hello everyone, and welcome to our backyard. Today's video I'd like to talk about Stachytarpheta, or the common name of porterweed. This is a fantastic bloomer and nectar producer in the Verbena family, and almost any hummingbird gardener and butterfly gardener would want this plant in their yard. Let me get a little bit closer. My name is Crystal, and I garden for butterflies and hummingbirds south of Houston along the Texas Gulf Coast in Zone 9. Got some hummingbirds and butterflies that are out and about. The reason I wanted to talk about this particular plant is because it is an incredible nectar producer, and it's one of the most reliable in the garden. The reason that is, and if you've heard me say this before on the channel, you know I'm a huge fan of porterweed. This happens to be a red porterweed. It's because porterweed blooms on just a certain section of the bloom stalk or bloom spike. And it only blooms during that section at a time, and it keeps blooming along the spike, but it doesn't bloom along the whole spike at the same time. It's not a problem though, because this plant produces and continues to produce nectar all throughout the day. It is an absolute favorite. In fact, it's one of the top 3 favorite butterfly nectar producers, along with lantana and pentas, during the hot summer. Like I mentioned, this one happens to be a red, and I've got a purple over here and then a blue over there. So let me go over to the purple. This plant has pollinators on it. This porterweed doesn't really even matter the color. It's just porterweed is such a favorite of pollen-loving animals. The other things that really you'll see a lot on porterweed are bumblebees, carpenter bees. You'll even see hummingbird moths. This is such an incredible nectar plant. It should be in at least a half a day of sun. You know, you'll see that it says full sun, but I've noticed, because I have most of mine, almost all of mine in containers, and I've moved them about the yard, they appreciate a little bit of protection late in the day from our hot and humid Texas sun. So most of my plants get at least half day, 6 or more hours of sun a day. And you can see this is just blooming, has got quite a few bloom stalks. I really like the purple. I'm going to get on the other side here. I like all the colors. I had a purple porterweed here last year in the same location, and it grew as tall and a little bit taller than my 6.5-foot fence. So they are very quick growers. This was in a gallon nursery pot that I planted, about a month and a half ago, and you can see all of the growth that these two have. It's just taken off. They really are wonderful plants. They need about average moisture. So I've noticed if they're in small containers, you're going to have to water them more frequently. I've got mine in large containers, and so I don't have to water as frequently, but they need fertile soil, average to well-draining soil. I have most of mine in containers, and so, as I mentioned, so I don't have a problem with the soil. All right, let me go over to the blue porterweed. I have grown porterweed for 3 years now, and I can honestly say I will always have it in my garden. It is that reliable and that wonderful of a nectar producer. This, however, I did not cut back, and I wanted to tape this before I cut it back so you can see it does. This is a very small, one of the smaller porterweeds. It's called a blue porterweed. And let's see if I can focus in. These blooms are smaller, and the bloom spikes are also a lot more narrow. You might think that's a purple color, and it does look purple, especially in the camera. It's more like a periwinkle color in real life, and if you put it next to my purple porterweed, you can tell they are different colors. But I did not cut this back, and so it is a little bit scraggly, and it is over 6 feet tall because it's taller than my fence, and I need to cut it back. So this just shows it is a prolific, very wonderful grower, and it does get woody, but you can cut it back. And I'm going to show you, the next one I'm going to show you is one I did cut back. So right next to my back patio door, oh, there's my little sweetie puppy. I have my red porterweed that I had out in the landscape that I just showed you the location of earlier, and this one had grown very unruly, and it had crisscrossed the big stems, and so I cut it back. I didn't like how it was growing, and I cut it way back. It has bounced back. So I cut back about a month and a half ago, and it has bounced back and put on wonderful new growth, and it is starting to flower. So I don't have as many bloom spikes yet, but you can tell it is just starting to flower, and I love it close because the hummingbirds and butterflies come close to my kitchen window there, and I can watch them out either my patio door or through the kitchen window. So cutting back your porterweed, I recommend, and it doesn't hurt it one bit. So the next two I'm going to show you are new for me. This is the first time I have put porterweed in the landscape right here. This is a dwarf variety, and it is called a dwarf red porterweed. The bloom spikes are much more narrow, and so far it is small, but there's a lot of beautiful growth it's putting on right now. So it's supposed to be 1 to 2 feet tall, and I'm curious to see if it will stay about that height. So this is new to me. I really hope it does stay dwarf in that, about that size. And the second one that's new to me, I'm going to come over to my other bed, and this is still in its container. And this is a pink porterweed. I've not had a pink one before. This is a really pretty and unique color. Its bloom spike is a little bit more narrow, and I'm not really sure where I'm going to put this yet, if I'm going to put it in a container or if I'm going to plant it in the ground. But I was really excited to see the color pink. In my north bed, I have another potted porterweed, and this one is called Durham's Blue Eyes. It kind of reminds me of the pink in this unique coloring, but it's more like a lavender and orchid color, and then it's got lavender and that bright magenta kind of in the center. This porterweed I also severely cut back. What I've noticed is if porterweed starts to crisscross on itself, it gets really unruly, and so I need to control that a little better. I usually just let it go, and I hopefully won't do that this year because I really like these plants, and I don't want them to get just out of control, because I'm going to show you, the next one I'm going to show you is out of control. This is a coral porterweed, and you can see it is just a mishmash of growth, and I do not like that at all. It is a beautiful flower though, and it is a coral porterweed, even though that looks slightly red. It is called a coral color, and this in particular, this one is a really important nectar plant for the overwintering hummingbirds in both Central and South America. So porterweed is, even though it's a member of the Verbena family, it's not native here to Texas, but oh my goodness, it grows beautifully here. It would do well anywhere if you were looking to have it as an annual. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take cuttings from this coral porterweed, and then I'm going to really cut this back, because as you can see, it's woody, it's messy, it's growing all over on itself, and I need to get this more under control. I have 8 different porterweed plants in my yard, and they're such a vital and important plant in my hummingbird, butterfly, and pollinator garden. I just can't imagine not having porterweed now that I've experienced it. This is 3 years now that I've had porterweed, and I can't speak highly enough. If you want to attract hummingbirds, butterflies, and native bees to your yard, this is a plant that will absolutely do it. You may ask, where do I buy them? And I get mine at my favorite nursery. I've purchased all of my porterweed from my favorite nursery south of Houston. But there are some really nice online shops that sell porterweed. And some of you have commented and placed comments on some of those online stores that have really nice porterweed. I believe one is in Louisiana. So if you're interested, you could certainly check out your local nursery to see if they have porterweed, and if they don't, consider purchasing one online and just watch it grow in the summer. I'm in zone 9B, and they're pretty tender for me. I only have one in the ground, and so I do protect them if we do have the threat of a freeze coming. My neighbor has grown the purple porterweed in ground, and she's had hers come back. I think purple porterweed is one of the more hardy as far as low temperatures. But for a good portion of the US, these would need to be either annuals or grown in containers and then brought inside when there was threat of low temperatures. Well, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for learning a little bit about porterweed. I've got a pipevine swallowtail butterfly over on my Tithonia that I'm going to try to get a really good video of here at the end. So thanks for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope to see you again soon.